of a bombshell lobbed at his own profession. Former CBS News president Van Gordon Sauter criticized liberal media outlets in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, writing, quote, "The liberal leading media has passed its tipping point and that a return to balance would be commercially unviable. The best solution may be an honest embrace of bias," end quote. Sauter ran CBS News in 1982 and then again in 1986. He went on to say that the liberal news sources are, quote, "an unrelentingly liberal in their fear and loathing of President Trump," end quote. Sauter also went on to ask what media coverage will look like when Trump wins or could win a second term. Well, here to talk about this and more is our company, former CNN anchor and brand journalist Heidi Collins and host of the Daily Caller podcast, Derek Hunter. Thank you guys for being on. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
I woke up this morning and I read this thing and I'm thinking, did this guy drink too much truth serum last night? And how did this thing end up? Because I couldn't have written it better myself. Let me show you a couple more parts of what he said in this op-ed. He starts off by saying that news organizations that claim to be neutral have long been creeping leftward, and loathing of Mr. Trump has accelerated their pace. He goes on. To the journalists, including more than a few Republicans, he is the blatant vulgarian, an incessant provocateur, and a dangerous leader who should be ousted next January, if not sooner. Let me finish up by saying this. Much of the journalism has become the clarion voice of resistance, dedicated to ousting the president, even though he was legally elected and, according to the polls, enjoys the support of 44% of likely 2020 voters. Heidi Collins, holy smokes. What do you think? I mean, it's the point that he's making is admit the bias and embrace the bias. Do you think many of your former colleagues would, regardless of what side of the aisle they come down, and my guess is most of them come down on the left, would they be willing to do this, embrace this?
Gosh, it's a great question. I wish I could answer for them, but I think that's a little bit dangerous. You know, Sean, I as a person who is really dedicated to this industry, I graduated from a top 10 journalism school, not far from where you guys are broadcasting today. My niece graduated from the same institution just this last weekend. My father-in-law, 30 years, Time Magazine, sister-in-law, USA Today. I could go on and on and on. And I think the intellectual honesty of whether it be my former colleagues at my particular network or all of them is really in question if they don't admit to the bias and they don't start saying, hey, look, here's the deal. Times change, and now we are agenda-driven storytellers. Maybe that's a better label. I'm really not sure.
Derek, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like, you know, that old movie Fight Club, where it was like the first rule of Fight Club is there is no Fight Club. I felt like he was saying something that you're not supposed to say in journalism, which is admitting the bias.
That is the bias. It is what he did. He said the quiet part out loud, but it's not a surprise. It's not a shock. The shock is that these people still go around and pretend that they're unbiased journalists. Jim Acosta insists that no, he's a straight news journalist. The problem started back in Watergate when Woodward and Bernstein became celebrities and made a difference. And then since then, so many people have gone into the profession going, I want to make a difference. I want to change the world rather than report the news and get rich doing it. Those people are now editors that are supposed to put the brakes on the bias. And soon the people who are embracing the bias will be the editors, and there'll be no holds barred. So while Sauter is right in that they'd be better served in just admitting the bias, I'm not sure they have any other choice at this point.
Well, that's a good point. I want to ask you real quick before we move on to the next topic, Heidi, though. Sauter makes some really good points and shows that they're even impressed with their bias, even though they may not want to admit it. But do you think this is going to move the needle at all for the media? Is this going to grab their attention and kind of wake them up, or is this going to go unnoticed by them?
Oh gosh, I don't think it's going to wake them up. I think that, you know, once the genie is out of the bottle, the genie's out of the bottle. I don't know how you put it back in. I don't know how you backtrack. I think some of the points that Sauter made were just excellent, and they were really balanced with some polling and some good research behind all of it. But I don't know how you backtrack. I think that the human condition now is kind of just out there for the unleashing.
Yeah, it seems like it is. Okay, well, in other news, as states begin to reopen, we saw something interesting, some Dems behaving kind of badly. And I want to show you this. So as we see that waters are starting to open, especially around Memorial Day, boats are starting to be redocked in Michigan. And a boat harbor owner put out this quote, and I want to put it up for you. A person was asking on the phone, can I dock my boat? Can I get in the water? How long is it going to take? And he said, well, would it make any difference? They said it's going to be about 3 weeks. And they said, would it make any difference? I'm the husband of the governor. Will it make a difference? And they said, no, actually, yeah, it will make a difference. We're going to put you to the end of the line now. You're going to have to wait even longer than 3 weeks. A very interesting point here. Obviously, Governor Whitmer, well known for her draconian measures that she put in Michigan. Do you find this funny at all, Derek, that now we have the governor's husband trying to take advantage of the system in some way and trying to get ahead of the line by saying, hey, I'm the governor's husband?
This is the lamest version of "Don't you know who I am" I've ever heard. I grew up in Michigan. It's sad to see what's happened to Michigan. But yeah, they're lucky. He's lucky they didn't sink his boat, considering how wildly unpopular the governor is with people who like to get outside. The people who need authoritarians, they absolutely love Governor Whitmer. The rest of Michiganders, not so much. So yeah, get to the back of the line and oops, we lost your number. Here's an even higher number is the absolute right thing to do. I've never seen. I've heard a lot of political spouses do the "don't you know who I'm married to" sort of thing, but never for anything like this. This is like trying to get the last doll on Christmas Eve to buy for your kid. Don't you know that my daughter wants a Barbie more than yours? No, just get in the back of the line. The fact that he would do it is a testament to how full of himself he is.
You know, the funny thing is the governor's office didn't deny it, but they just said, well, you know, we don't comment on online rumors. It's like, that doesn't sound. Heidi, let me just pivot across the country a little bit. Governor Ralph Northam, my governor in Virginia, who's been very clear about what we need to do in terms of social distancing and wearing a mask. Let me show you a couple pictures of him down on the boardwalk, maybe not adhering to his own advice. This is Governor Northam taking selfies with individuals clearly not socially distant and clearly not wearing a mask. What I think is fascinating on this is the level of hypocrisy that we get from a lot of these folks where they tell everyone else how to behave, whether it's the Whitmer folks telling us the behavior that we can engage in, Governor Northam talking about what we need to wear, and yet this is what they look like when they're
leadership by example, right? I mean, if you're going to espouse these types of rules and regulations, and whether necessary or not, and some of that, as we've covered for months now, is somewhat subjective, and certain people are comfortable at other levels than others. But when it comes down to it, if you are telling someone, hey, this is what you need to do, and you're finger pointing and you're doing all of those things, then you better darn well adhere to your own rules.
That's a good point. Well, Derek, Heidi, thanks for being on with us. Heidi, I know you're about to join us shortly. We'll bring back our company in just a moment and talk about the lack of media coverage of VP Joe Biden's recent comments about black voters when we return.